Hi there. This is Chris Nichols coming to you with another presentation talking about all the cool stuff there is in Garrett County, Maryland. Today I'll be talking about history dates, and these are not just dates in time, these are romantic history themed dates you can go on in Garrett County. So let's jump right in. A little bit about me. I'm an amateur historian of the area. One of the big projects I recently headed up was creating the Meshick Browning History Center at the McHenry Community Park as part of the Deep Creek Lake Lions Club. I'm the editor for the Glade Star for the Garrett County Historical Society, but I really don't have any sort of formal history training. I was just born here in Garrett County, moved around a lot as a kid, and then moved back here in 2001 and really decided to set down my roots back here and call it home, and got really interested in local history and the stuff to do around here. And my goal with this presentation was to kind of find a location in the county and then build a date around that with 2 or 3 things to do that are history related in that area, and then hopefully to find a place for dinner, drinks, or dessert nearby that at least operated out of a historic building. So that it was tough to find a place for a meal afterwards after your date that had a totally historic theme, but if it was at least operating out of a building built since like 1940, I counted it. And here are the dates, and I've got about 10 dates, and I haven't given away exactly where they are with the titles yet, but we'll go through each of these dates, and then there are some kind of history themed events that I'll talk about as well. For this presentation, I've set up an interactive Google map. You can see a screenshot of that on the right, and it's got all of the date areas there in different colors as different layers in that map, so you could just click on one of those specific layers and see the points that I've indicated in this presentation in that map. And you can get a link to this presentation, which will give you a link to that Google map, at my website, dimez.com, and if you want to do all those other backslashes and stuff. But if you just start at dimez.com and go to posts, this will be one of the posts in there, and you can search for history-themed dates in there to find this particular presentation with all of the hyperlinks enabled. So all the stuff that I have linked to, you'll be able to click on those links when you download the full presentation. Okay, so let's jump right in. The first date is Date with a Coal Miner's Daughter, and this one is in Kitzmiller. There's a lot of coal heritage in the town of Kitzmiller. There's a great riverside path, and you can eat at an old company store. Let's take a little more detail on that. The walking path by the Potomac River is a very nice, easy stroll. There's a lot of historical sites along that way. There's walking tours and more information you can download there. Right in the town of Kitzmiller is a nice coal heritage museum that's usually open on Saturdays only, but call ahead to make sure that the curator is going to be there, and that's a really cool exhibit about the history of coal mining in Kitzmiller and some scale models of mines and mine equipment. And then highly recommend a meal at the Coal Bucket Restaurant, and there's great home-style food there, and Barb McKinnon has a great kind of little museum and photo albums and a really cool presentation that she has running on the TV in there of historical photographs and just snippets from not only Kitzmiller but the whole Garrett County area. But specifically, there's a lot of cool stuff in Kitzmiller to check out on that walking tour. And I'm ending all of these each tours with a corny line of, in this one, I really dig you. Oops, are we on a date? That one has to be Accident, of course. You can check out Garrett County's oldest structure and nearby the unique octagonal chapel, and get some drinks at one of probably the first commercial cow milking parlors in the county. let's jump into accident and for some more detail. So the believed to be oldest structure in Garrett County is the Drain House. That's pictured in the upper right here. And you can just kind of walk around on the outside of that. That is open occasionally for special occasions, but it's worth just going and checking out the outside. A little bit northwest of Accident is the Mill Run Mercy Chapel, and this is a very interesting, unique structure. It's one of the most architecturally sophisticated and best preserved octagonal buildings in Maryland. And then I'd recommend going to the Branch Bender Cidery, and there's a part of their facility there. They make apple cider, hard apple cider drinks, sparkling cider, and it has one of the first commercial milking parlors in the county. So it's a little tough to see in that picture, but that's actually a multi-level building there where the cows would be on the upper level and there would be multiple people milking the cows on the lower level. So that's kind of a neat little piece of history. And then during the Accident Homecoming Festival Parade, there is often a walking tour, historical walking tour that they'll hand out. I haven't really ever been able to get it otherwise, but they'll hand out pieces of paper with some interesting older buildings and accidents to check out there. And of course, the corny line for this one is, "My love for you is no accident." Okay, honeymoon fit for a president. That one would, of course, be Deer Park, Maryland. There is not a lot to actually go into here, but a lot of things to check out and signs to visit, and the site of Grover Cleveland's honeymoon. So we'll just jump right into that. One of the interesting things, another interesting church feature to check out in the county is Our Father's Log Church. That's in Altamont, and it's one of the last standing log churches in the U.S. It's still owned by the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland, and it's still a consecrated church. And then in the area of Deer Park, there are a number of historical markers to check out. Of course, as I mentioned, this was Cleveland Cottage, which is still standing in the Deer Park area. Grover Cleveland and his young wife had their honeymoon here and at the Deer Park Hotel Cottage. And Deer Park Hotel is no longer standing, but this was one of the grand hotels of the area that was built by the B&O Railroad, and kind of was the first tourism area of Garrett County. A lot of people came from the hotter, more congested cities, Baltimore mainly, somewhat DC, via the rail, and came up to here to these magnificent hotels that the railroad and others built in order to take advantage of the mountain air. So there's some signs talking about the Deer Park Hotel in the area. One interesting other sign that's kind of near the log church talks about the Confederate raid during the Civil War on the B&O Railroad that passed through Garrett County, and there was some very large strategic value to the B&O Railroad, which was part of the Union's infrastructure, and the Confederates attacked the B&O Railroad in many places, and Garrett County had a couple of places where Confederate raiders attacked along its route. And then I recommend for the dinner, drinks, and dessert, the Deer Park Inn. It is also in a existing structure, one of the quote-unquote cottages of these that surrounded the Deer Park Hotel. These cottages are fairly magnificent mansions in their own right, and very elegant upscale meal. Again, I would say click on the link there and call for reservations. Reservations only at the Deer Park Inn. And the pickup line here is dealing with Grover Cleveland's 2 non-consecutive terms of office as president. I like you so much. Let's go on 2 non-consecutive dates. Bring me a blooming rose. So if you know a little bit about the area's history, Blooming Rose was the area that's kind of a little bit to the west of Friendsville, but one of the very first concentrated settlements of the county. And in this tour, you can see a lot of the cool things in Friendsville, and also swing up to the tri-point of Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. Jumping more into that, so the point of the Mason-Dixon line that spans 3 states, you can walk to that. You actually have to go from Pennsylvania and hike in there a little bit, but it's a pretty easy hike, and it's a pretty neat experience to be in 3 states at once. In the actual town of Friendsville, there's a very nice 18-stop walking tour that has a map and signs at each spot with historical information at each of those stops. The Kendall hike, which goes upstream, so it goes south down the Youghiogheny River, ends at the town of Kendall, the ghost town of Kendall, which was a former logging town. Very nice scenic hike along there, and you can see some foundations and some signs that there was actually a little town there at the terminus of this trail along the Yough. Also in Friendsville is the Friend Family Society headquarters and museum. The Friend family is pretty big. It's a big family that's a lot of genealogy and a lot of descendants throughout the U.S., and this houses the archives for that organization and a very nice little museum of artifacts from the area and some specific to Friendsville as well. And again, check for hours on that. It's not regularly open. I think the last time I saw it was open Fridays, but hit the website and then call and see what the hours are going to be before stopping in. And then for your after date libations, I'd recommend going to the Friendsville Public House. The tax records say it's a 1904 building. It looks fairly new on the inside, but there's some evidence on the outside it's an older building, and it's a great local pub that happens to be in an older building, but it's a good, nice local stop. And sorry, this one's bad. Let's get friendly. I really couldn't think of anything. I just got friends stuck in my head. The Vagabond Voyage. This one deals with Swallow Falls State Park and the visit of the vagabonds to that. So you'll go to Swallow Falls State Park and then go to Oakland at Vagabond Tap House for your meal. Swallow Falls State Park is, of course, a very nice natural feature. It has 3 major waterfalls. Of course, Swallow Falls, the namesake. Muddy Creek Falls, which is the highest waterfall in Maryland. And then a nicer little Tolliver Falls. It's kind of off the main path, but a nice little serene spot there. There's a number of historical markers in the state park, one of which is actually fairly wrong. All that red cross out is stuff that is incorrect on this sign. But the main story that a group calling themselves the Vagabonds, that consisted of Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone. In this case, John Burroughs was not part of the trip that visited here, but he was part of this quote-unquote group of vagabonds. And that's what they called themselves, and they traveled the country and kind of roughing it and experiencing nature and just getting away from it all. One of the first organized car camping expeditions that a lot of historians have said. You can see a picture of Thomas Edison and his wife there at the top of Muddy Creek Falls. So Thomas Edison, and there's some famous pictures of Henry Ford kind of cooling his feet in the Yough River. So there's some neat history there of the vagabonds. There's another historical marker commemorating the Civilian Conservation Corps. Those were the group of young men who, during the Depression, came and built a lot of the state park and state land facilities that we still use today. As I said, there's some great trails and the waterfalls to check out. And if you're really interested in history of Swallow Falls in this area, you can check out my other presentation, Freemason Gold and Ferris Wheels, and it really digs in deep about how we almost, the falls almost were dammed up and choked by sawdust. But anyway, at the end of your date, I would recommend visiting Vagabond's Tap Room. They have drinks, dinner, dessert, and great beer selection, unique eats, and in a historic building, and they're really stay true to that vagabond theme that they've taken on. And, of course, the cheesy pickup line, I think I'm falling for you. Okay, Meshach and Munchies. This one may be a little self-evident. It's going to be about Meshach Browning in the Glades area in the center of the county. And there's a historical center and then a place where you can go for some snacks afterwards. As I said, one of my pet projects that I'm proud of and like to promote is the Meshach Browning Trail and History Center. It's part of the McHenry Community Park that's run by the Lions Club in Accident, Maryland. It's the Deep Creek Lions Club, but it's the address is in Accident, Maryland, Bumblebee Road. And at the History Center, we have a series of interpretive panels. You can see one of those at the top there that tells you a little bit about the life and times of Meshach Browning, who was one of the earliest settlers of Garrett County. And he wrote a book, 44 Years of the Life of a Hunter, which tells many of his hunting stories of hunting bear and deer and panthers in what was the wildlands of Garrett County at the time, but it also provides a lot of really interesting detail about what life was like in the early 1800s of what would become Garrett County. It wasn't even Garrett County yet at that point. We've also installed a number of art pieces that are themed around Meshach Browning, so a big stone sculpture, a chainsaw carved sculpture, a lot of cool stuff there. We're also starting to try to tell the story of women in this era. A lot of Meshach's book is centered about his hunting stories, and he mentions his wife with great affection, but not really much about what life must have been like for her. And we also have an early 1800s cabin that has been donated to the club that we would like to have rebuilt here on site to increase that experience. So a lot of cool things going on there. You can also check out the historical marker at his gravesite that's just a few miles away. I have a driving tour that you can click on here in the link, and that it provides an online map of sites from his book. So he mentions some sites where he was camping or hunting and doing other things with enough detail where we can kind of get a fairly good idea of where he actually was. So the map shows you a lot of those sites that you can just do a driving tour of some of those sites. And then for your snack afterwards, I'd recommend Country Roads. It's technically in Bittinger, and they have great ice cream and pizza, a nice little roadside stop. Again, the building doesn't look too old, but it was technically built in 1938, so I'm calling it historic. And this one is, if you know some history about Meshach Browning, his first wife was named Mary, and then she died from illness, and he promptly married another woman named Mary. So apparently he would only marry you if your name was Mary. Sweet Stroll Through Time. This one is a walking tours of Oakland. And there's some nice walking path, and then some self-guided tours, and then you can get some ice cream at the old bottling plant. In Oakland, there is the Oakland Heritage Trail. That is a paved short walking path. And in this case, that if you click on that hyperlink, it goes to one of my video trail tours. So I'm working on visiting all of the trail areas. There are 45-ish in Garrett County, and doing a short 10 to 15 minute trail tour of each of these trail areas to give you an idea of what the experience is like. So they're all on YouTube right now. I've got about 30 some of them done, and that's where that link will take you, give you an idea more of what that trail is like. But historically, there's some interesting sites there along that trail. The site of the former Oakland Hotel. This was another one of those grand railroad era hotels that I don't know if this one burned down or was dismantled. That seemed to be the fate of most of those bigger hotels. And only the gas house remains today, but you can pass by that and read a little bit more about that. And then pictured here in the upper right is quote-unquote the legend of Washington Springs. So George Washington did indeed travel through here in 1784 and legendarily stopped, and drank from this spring. He did actually also stay at Charles Friend's house that's nearby. You'd have to drive to this historical marker. But that's well documented that he actually did stay at a a local person's house that was about a mile or two out of town on his way through. Also in Oakland are a number of walking tours of downtown Oakland. Those are also online. If you click on that link, that will take you to this interactive Google map and descriptions of all the sites along these tours. And they're little 4 to 5 stop thematic tours of different, maybe industries of Oakland and grand houses and that kind of thing, that each of those tours kind of highlights buildings that are appropriate to that theme. So they're all very short, but you can combine them all or do them all and get to them via that link. And then once you've worked up an appetite, stop at Devler's in the old bottling plant and have some ice cream. And this one is a George Washington themed line. I cannot tell a lie, so please don't ask me how your rear end looks in that dress. Okay, A Prescription for Love. This one is another Oakland-based tour that ends at an old drugstore. So you visit the Oakland museums and then have a meal and maybe ice cream or a milkshake at Englander's. Let's jump into this one. So there are 3 excellent museums in the Oakland History District. The Garrett County Historical Museum, which is the headquarters also for the Garrett County Historical Society. The Garrett County Transportation Museum, which has all kinds of excellent, really cool vehicles and other modes of transit. And then the Oakland B&O train station, which is a magnificently preserved train station, again from that heyday of rail travel, and it really has stood the test of time well. All 3 of those are typically open, midday to mid-afternoon, through the end of the week usually, so Wednesdays through Saturday and Sunday. So check the websites, call ahead to make sure they are all free to check out, and I highly recommend doing all 3. Also, we're working on a project to install QR code signs with QR codes on the streets of Oakland, so you can scan the code and pull up historic photographs of what these streets look like back in the 50s and the 30s. So back when they were taking some of those picture postcard moments, you'll be able to pull those up and see how the streets of Oakland have changed. And then for your date-ending meal, go to Englander's. It is no longer a drugstore, but it still can maintain the traditional drugstore diner and the ice cream counter. And then the rest of the store is now an antique store as well. So if you like history, you'll probably enjoy strolling through the antique store as well. And history and a milkshake, just what the doctor ordered. Okay, a cornucopia of history. Again, some history buffs of the northern part of the county will probably recognize that this is Grantsville, and there's a lot to see in Grantsville, and we'll jump right in to checking that out. So, of course, one of the big icons of Garrett County is the Castleman River Bridge. There is a state park now that protects that, and very, excellent piece of engineering for the early 1800s. I'm going to get myself in trouble on putting out a date on that, but it is all there at the website and at the site of when the history of it being built. Right next to there is the Spruce Forest Artisan Village, where you can witness artists performing their crafts in rebuilt log cabins. So it's a whole little colony of these log cabins, pioneer era cabins that have been reassembled all in one spot and given over to an artist to perform their work. So blacksmithing and ceramics and weaving and pretty much every kind of artisan type craft you can name. I think there is an artist there in residence that is doing it. In downtown Grantsville is the Grantsville Museum with some unique exhibits, one of which given over to Leo Beachy, early photographer of Garrett County, a very skilled photographer that captured a lot of really cool moments and cool scenery of early Garrett County. Some information on the 1960s B-52 crash that happened in Garrett County. A B-52 bomber with unarmed nuclear weapons crashed in the county in the middle of winter, and that's an interesting story too. So there's some interesting stuff in the Grantsville Museum. Call ahead. Make sure that's open. Throughout Grantsville along the National Road, there are a lot of the historical markers there. I didn't list all of those, but a lot of stuff dealing with the National Road and Braddock's march along that on his ill-fated campaign to get the French out of Fort Duquesne, which didn't work. But more on that in another presentation. And then end up your date with the meal, dessert at the Castleman Inn. This is a really cool historic landmark. It's a tavern and inn and that has been serving delicious meals to travelers since 1842, and locals are also welcome. So you can take it for granted that I'm into you. Ha ha ha. Okay, another damn date. That one has to be dealing with Deep Creek Lake, right? There's actually not a lot of, places where you can go centrally to find history on Deep Creek Lake, but we'll go over some of the cool spots. So probably the biggest concentration of Deep Creek Lake artifacts and history is at the Transportation Museum in Oakland. It's the second floor is the Deep Creek Lake room, and it has some very cool stuff. And we're working on putting together kind of more of a comprehensive history of the lake in there. Right now, the signs and the artifacts are really just kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. So there's nowhere that you can really kind of look at a single place to find a good history of the lake. But the Discovery Center at the Deep Creek Lake State Park has some really nice nature exhibits, some stuff about the history of the lake, and a really cool area on coal mining. There was a active coal mine kind of what's in the state park now, and they have that preserved, and you can see more about that there. And then I try not to mention businesses too much, but Bear Creek Traders has really done a great job of preserving and presenting some cool pieces of Deep Creek Lake history. So I recommend going in there. They have some great interpretive panels. They have Skeeter Bowman. He's a local legend and Deep Creek Lake history icon. His plane is actually hanging from the rafters of the building in there. So some cool stuff there, and some cool history they've preserved and presented there. And then for your dinner, drinks, and dessert, I recommend Pond Run Bar and Kitchen. It is Deep Creek Lake's oldest bar, and they are doing a good job of preserving that legacy. And yep, my love for you runs deep. Couldn't do anything else on that one, right? Let's jump into the events that are historical based or have some history theme to them. The big one is the Victorian Chautauqua. This is in Mountain Lake Park, and it's a multi-day festival. It's usually the weekend after July 4th, and it is themed around the Chautauquas of the 1800s that had they were intellectual seminars almost, where they would have lectures and information. And these now, the Victorian Chautauqua today has live music and reenactors, old cars, historic home tours. So a lot of great stuff going on at this, and it's getting better and growing every year. So it's a very cool, immersive experience in history. And I was struggling to put together one of my little dates for Mountain Lake Park because, again, it's mainly just signs you can go see. They do have their Mountain Lake Park Historical Association Museum is in the ticket booth for what used to be the massive amphitheater that they had these Chautauquas in that held up to 5,000 people. Unfortunately, the little ticket booth is the only thing that's left. But that museum will be open during the Chautauqua, and be sure to click on that website and call for other hours as well. But I was glad I was able to include Mountain Lake Park because this is a great area for a lot of history, and they are really putting on a great event with this Chautauqua. And then a couple of maybe not necessarily local history, but the Celtic Festival and Oktoberfest, we certainly have a common European history and culture there. And the Celtic Festival is held in Friendsville, usually the first Saturday in June. And a great way to impress your date if you can throw heavy things very far, especially if you do it in a kilt. I bet your date will be highly impressed. And then Oktoberfest, always typically the beginning of October. Hopefully the Grantsville Lions Club will continue this tradition of putting this on. And here my wife Lisa impresses me with her ability to throw something big and heavy, a beer keg. But these are just kind of fun things to, kind of stay connected to the common history and culture that we have in the European realm. And then Autumn Glory, again, doesn't specifically have any history that's part of it, but it's been going on for 56 years now, so it's kind of history itself. And, it's got everything of a small town festival that you would want. A big, big parade, craft shows, car shows. The big thing that really started Autumn Glory in the first place was turkey dinners. It was a kind of a turkey dinner extravaganza put on by the local turkey farmers of the county that grew into a parade, which was started by the Oakland Lions Club at the time, and really has morphed into this countywide big festival that is, like I said, everything that you would think of and want a small town festival like this to be. So nothing really history related, but it has got its own little history now that it's over 50 years, which is kind of my definition of what history is. And I thought up a line for this one: "You're so beautiful, even the leaves are falling for you." Just tell that to your date right after you watch the parade. So that's about it. If you are interested in digging into some more detail and finding other stuff, I recommend my Ultimate Garrett County Adventure Map. I'm also an amateur cartographer. I produced a map that shows all the trails, all the Maryland historical markers, all the National Register sites in the county. I've got an online version of that you can click on there at that hyperlink, and you can also order paper copies to take with you on your adventures. Folds down just like an good old-fashioned road map. I've got a lot more history, lore, information, events, and stuff like that on my website, dimesy.com. And then, of course, I want to make a plug for the Garrett County Historical Society. And it's the best value in the county, in the world. For just $25, you can become a member for a year, get 4 issues of the Glade Star, and all the other benefits of membership. So it's definitely worth it. Go click on that link and support the Garrett County Historical Society for our mission of promoting and preserving the history of our county. And of course, I hope your next date is historic. Thanks for listening, and enjoy. And if you want to get in contact with me, ask any questions, tell me my dates are terrible, contact me any of those ways below. Until then, I hope to see you out and about enjoying the history of our area.